Hello, my name is Ken Burnett. I'm a professional fundraiser. I've been a professional fundraiser since 1977, though actually I was a fundraiser long before that. And I want to start by telling a story called Fundraising Fudge. I have to take you back to the 1950s when I was about 6 or 7 years old, growing up in the north of Scotland. And in those days, I think the whole world seemed to be in black and white. And I was in short trousers, playing football in the streets, jumpers for goalposts, that kind of thing. And in those days, my mother was the area secretary for Dr. Bernardo's homes. This was a volunteer post, and it was her job to place in as many households as she possibly could the wonderful, iconic Dr. Bernardo's home collecting box. And this is it, the cottage collecting box. It's rather battered now with age, but it was a beautiful artifact. And what she did was that every 6 months she would place an advertisement in the local newspaper, and everybody who had taken a Bernardo's collecting box would bring them into our house to have the contents collected. And this meant they would be emptied onto our living room table, and it was my job to count up the money. And this was when I first gained my love of money. And the problem in those days, just like today, was that there were so many other competing causes, and they were all doing the same thing. They all had their version of the Bernardo's collecting box. But my mother had a brilliant idea, and I think it illustrates one of the fundamental principles of fundraising. She decided that she would offer everybody who brought in a home collecting box, she would offer a piece of her homemade fudge. Now, my mother made the very best fudge in the world. It was absolutely delicious. And I am not kidding you, such was the success of this idea that before long, young people, every young person in the area seemed to want to take a Bernardo's collecting box. And they would come round on collection day, and the queue of young people clutching their Bernardo's box would come out the front door, down the garden gate, and round into the street and round the corner. There were so many people all clutching their now heavy Bernardo's home collecting box. And as I say, my job was still to count this money, only there was a lot more to count. And I thought, well, if they each get a piece of Mother's famous fudge for bringing the box in, then I too should get a piece of fudge for emptying it and counting the contents. And so my mother grew to be the most successful fundraiser for Bernardo's in the north of Scotland. And I grew to be a very large child because I was eating too much of this wonderful fudge. But when I left school, I decided, I so much enjoyed this process of counting money that I decided to join a bank. But I found that very boring, and I left relatively quickly. And of course, I should have stayed, because if I'd only stayed in the bank, I would have realized that they get as much fudge as they want. But the real lesson from this story is about reciprocity. It's about if you give something to your donors, then they will gladly give generously to you in return. And I think I learned that lesson about reciprocity from my mother all those years ago with Fundraising Fudge.